good morning. I hope that everybody is well. We're tired this morning. All through the night a storm has raged outside and our house has creaked and groaned in the wind and the rain has lashed the windows. This morning when I went to let the dogs out, they took one look at the rain and they turned around and went back on the sofa and curled up and went to sleep. Bless them. We will have to go out a bit later on though. Just hope that there's like a gap in this weather. I haven't had a very good week health-wise. Last Sunday I had a cough, and by Sunday evening that had really developed into something else, and on Monday, even though I was testing negative with the lateral flow test, I was convinced I had COVID, and I did a PCR test, and when that came back I was negative, so I haven't had COVID. But my God, I've really had something. I think I had like proper flu, but I'm on the mend now. And just as well, because I've got so much to do in the lead up to travelling. I can't believe that we're going to be travelling again. I am so excited. I just pray to God that when we have our fit to fly test in the 24 hours leading up to takeoff, that it's negative. And my husband keeps saying, think positive, everything's going to be okay. I say, no, I don't want to think positive, I want to think negative. We do not want a positive result. Linda and I, we are just so excited to be with our friends again. It's really strange. In normal times, I actually travel a lot between holidays and, visiting needlework related things. I travel several times a year, and normally my suitcase never gets put right away. I normally pop my suitcase in a spare bedroom and sort of launder all my travel stuff and then repack it, and I keep my sort of travel plugs and travel hair dryers and, the sort of things that you use for traveling all in one place. Well, when COVID happened, everything just got put away. So, it's a question of getting the suitcases out of the attic and finding where I put everything. That's been a big challenge. When I'm in the States, I'm actually giving a lecture, and I needed to locate all my electronic equipment that I bring, and I'm really glad that I checked it all out beforehand, because I've actually changed my iPads, and on the new iPads there are different connections, so I had to get organised with that. But I'm pretty well packed for my trip. That's how keen I am. Oh gosh, I can't wait. 2 weeks tomorrow, I actually travel to London because I'm having a few days in London before we fly out. So it's getting close now and very, very real. This week, I really haven't done much with needlework. I did get some more stitches in on a present for a friend. Not a lot, but actually it was surprising how many stitches were in this little tump. But it is growing slowly, hopefully a little bit more this week. Those colours are so restful to work with, and I've just popped the original out today so you can see what I'm aiming for. I can't wait to stitch this little house with the flowers in the garden. Very, very sweet. Really enjoying it. Ray said to me, he said, there's no I in friend, when he looked over my shoulder. So I said to him, no, the little girl did not stitch an I in friend, so it's not my mistake. Last week, when I was talking about Mrs. Campbell, I was so excited to share her with you, and I wasn't feeling my best. I forgot to mention something. This sampler is so special to me that I wanted to make her booklet a little bit extra special. So I thought, what could I do? And it occurred to me that the thread legend that we put inside the booklet that has this label on that you can fill out and put on the back of your sampler, that when this was removed from the book, it would be really nice to have another one inside, so that even though you've used it, your booklet is still intact. So you actually have a double thread legend and label in your booklet. So that was just a little something extra that we managed to squeeze in with our budget. Printing costs are so high, and they've gone up and up and up. So, you know, we were just pleased that we could just put that in for you as a little extra. Now, these thread legends come labels, you can actually rip them out of the book, or you can actually gently ease them out, but we've put the perforated lines there so that you can cut them out as well, so you have a nice trim finish. Because if you're going to put that on the back of your sampler as a label, you know, it's nice to have a neat edge rather than a jagged edge from the spiral holes. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that. What else have I got to talk about? Well, I've been obviously getting myself ready for Nashville, and I've got my project bag, but on the plane, I like to, like, I always travel with loads and loads of luggage, and this time I'm traveling with a lot. But on the plane, I don't want too much luggage, so I really try to condense my stitching down as small as possible. And I haven't chosen my project yet, but I plan to travel with a project that's either one colour or just a handful of colours. So I've decided that I'm going to take this little case for the plane. It's hard, it's vegan leather, so if I spilled a drink I can wipe it off. And these are little sewing cases. I bought two before Christmas, the red one, which is the small, and the larger teal coloured. And I bought mine from Hand and Lock, which is an English-based company. But if you are in the States, Hobby House Needlework stock these as well. So I'm going to be taking this on the plane with me. I can keep my spare needles in here, and I can also put threaded needles in this little cotton band. This does actually come off as well. I'm going to be using on the plane these little inexpensive scissors. These were just £5. They could have even been like £3.99. If these are confiscated, it's not the end of the world. But in my hold luggage, I will be taking these kahanas. I would have thought that the red ones, the scarlet poppy red ones, would have been my favourite, but it turns out that these are the ones that I really like using the most. And obviously the scissors are all the same, it's just the colour, but there's just something about these, I really like them. And I'm so pleased that I discovered these kahana scissors. These are just beautiful scissors that you can use every day. So with travelling, those blades may well, those blades are definitely under the, you know, they're legal to travel with, but I'm a little bit concerned in case they class it that length, and I just can't risk these being confiscated. I'm going to take a seam ripper with me. If I make a mistake, it's normally when I'm traveling because I'm not really concentrating. And then in this little case, I can fit my glasses and I can fit some spools of silk to stitch with. These three colours are the colours from a present for a friend. And I'm using this case at the moment, and I found it really practical, and when I zip it up, it's Hugo proof. Hugo can't get my spools and chew them. Now, I've yet to decide on which hoop I'm going to take, and it's probably going to be one of these three. These are all queen hoops. and they're vintage hoops. Queen's hoops aren't made any longer, and these are really collectible. Why they're so good, I love the fact that you tighten them with this little dial. I actually don't have much feeling in my fingertips. This is why if you have something handwritten from me, my writing is terrible. I actually have a problem holding the pen. A needle is different. So I find these very much easier than more of like the modern day screws that you use to tighten your hoop. The hoops have these felt bands built into them, and they really hold your linen very, very well. Now, this is quite a small one, but if you're in a car or if you're on a plane, you don't want to take up lots of room. And this one, it's just palm size, and I actually find that's really quite nice to stitch with. And also, because it's quite small, you can get into the corners of your linen as well. This is another possibility, my oval hoop. You don't see the oval hoops very often, so I was particularly pleased to get this one. This is a larger hoop, but this actually gives you a really good working surface. And whilst that might be a little bit big for the plane, when I'm stitching with my friends in the hotel, that's a really good size to work with. So I think I will probably take these two or these two. We will have to see. It will depend on the project that I eventually decide I'm going to travel with. There are two possibles at the moment, though these aren't definites. I might chart a Robson. She's just two colours, and she's a very elegant little sampler. I love the font that A. Robson has used, and also I think that green, it's really sort of fresh and zingy, and I think this is going to look really nice when it's stitched with silk on a high count fabric. That's a possible. When you're travelling, you don't want something that requires huge amounts of concentration and counting. You know, Linda and I, we're sat next to each other on the plane. I'm sure we're going to talk our way right across the Atlantic, and then we're going to be stitching together and with other ladies. So something like this is an easy one to multitask with, really. So that's a possibility. Linda's stitching an all red sampler, which I've already charted for her, and you'll see that as a release at some stage for Hands Across the Sea samplers. The other possibility is this little sampler. I just love the shape of this, and the little girl wrote, "Boast not thyself of tomorrow, for thou knowest not what a day may bring forth," and her name is actually Jane Goforth, and that's obviously probably why she chose that verse, that word forth. She stitched this when she was 8 years old, and I was so thrilled with this sampler that on the back of the sampler there is some more stitching from Jane, and at 10 years of age she stitched this sort of model size version of a apron, and she very neatly hem stitched a handkerchief, and she embroidered her name, and these are really very, very tiny little stitches. On her apron she did some darning. I don't know if you'll pick that up, it's just there. She did some darning work, and she's put some seams in. Very, very pretty. And she's also, this probably won't show, but there's just this lovely little bit of embroidery at the bottom. It's very, very pretty. And there's a little bit of information about Jane, which for me always makes something that little bit extra special. So she was born in March 1873, and it'll be her birthday when we're in Nashville, the 5th of March. Maybe this should be the one I take. That could be an omen, a sign that this is the one. She was born at Rudston which is a village near Bridleton in Yorkshire. She attended the village school with her two sisters, and that's probably where she stitched this sampler. Her father was a farm bailiff, and in 1891 she was working as a live-in housemaid in Scarborough. She married Francis William Thompson in Scarborough, and in 1901 they had a little girl. It took her 6 years to have a child because they got married in 1895, and she died in 1923, so she was 50 when she died. It's not a long life, 50. It really is. When you get to 58 by age, that is not a long life. Now it's clicked that her birthday is the 5th of March. Maybe this should be the one. We shall see. There are other possibilities that I have got to consider. When I showed my project last week and I talked about, I had put this sampler on the medium side stretches so that I could show you all of the sampler. And somebody asked me, what do you do with the excess fabric on a Millennium frame? Well, it just wraps around the bars. And as you work down your sampler, you roll down a little bit of the top and let some of the bottom, so you're moving the exposed section. Just want to show you, Millennium frames, they're so clever. You get this fabulous tension on them, yet you can have so much fabric on your roll. There we are. That is how much fabric was on this roll, and I still had perfect drum tight tension. You might ask, why haven't I cut this linen off? Well, because the Millennium frame offers you such fabulous tension, you don't really have to think about cutting off the linen. And what I find, I might get several projects out of this piece, and if I don't cut the linen until the projects are stitched, I can actually get far more out of this piece of linen. Anyway, so that answers that question. You just roll it along the bars. I've been asked a question about converting silks and DMC threads, so we're going to talk about that next, but I want just to clear this away before we do so I'll be back in a second. We are frequently receiving emails and messages asking us if we have a conversion list for SWA 103, or if we know of one. We don't know of one, and we don't have one. Every booklet that we produce for a sampler, those colours have been chosen specifically for that sampler. When we pull those colours, the DMC, the SWA d'Alger and the SWA 103, they're not converted to each other. They are all pulled from comparing those threads to the original sampler. On Friday, I was working with a sampler, and I couldn't get the perfect match in either the SWA 103 or the DMC. This was the closest match in DMC, and this was the closest match in SWA 103. If you put those two together, they don't perfectly match each other. And in fact, there is a DMC thread that's actually a better match to this colour. But that's not what we were doing. We were picking the colours of the original sampler, and these two were the closest. So if you put all the threads together, they wouldn't necessarily match each other, but they would all be the closest match in that range to the antique sampler. If you haven't got the antique sampler and you've got a chart that's in DMC and you want to stitch it with silk, you have to compare the silk to the DMC. That's the only way you can do it. And that is really why the reproductionist thread conversion should be the better one to work with if you are trying to stitch your sampler in the closest colours to the original antique sampler. I hope that sort of explains why sometimes there can be a slight difference between the colours that we have chosen. We are not matching those, we're matching that to the sampler, and we're matching that to the sampler. Like, quite often you can match the colour exactly. I was pulling some colours yesterday. Both of those are really identical. You would have a hard job to see the slightest difference between those colours. Both of those match the antique sampler perfectly. But you know, sometimes, you know, again, these two colours, these were the closest to the sampler, but together they are fractionally different. So I hope that explains to you why sometimes there is a slight difference between the ranges. If you go to a shop and ask them to do a conversion, they are matching cottons against silks, and that's what they're converting. We're not converting that. We are giving you a thread legend for the sampler. SWA 103, they don't have a shade card, so you are reliant on your store doing a conversion for you. I hope that Overa SWA will bring out a shade card for SWA 103. It would be really, really nice. If you have a list of SWA 103 colours and you want to stitch it in Saphine, that's an easy conversion. The Saphine has a 2 in front of the number, so just pulling a number randomly from my head. So if you had 080 in SWA 103, 2080 would be the conversion in the Saphine. You can't do that for the SWA d'Alger and the SWA 103 because they have a completely different numbering system. But in SWA d'Alger, they do have a thread card. My thread card is very, well, it's falling apart, it's very tatty because this gets so much use. But there is an amazing range of colours, and I love with these silks the nuances in the shades. It's very rare that in the SWA d'Alger you can't find a really, really good match to the antique sampler. Beautiful, beautiful palettes to work from. DMC, they do a thread card, and again, my thread card is very tatty, it's falling apart. I'm constantly sticking these back into place. A lovely range of colours. So that is your DMC thread card. Thread cards change because new colours are brought out. Some colours are retired. Putting these together, it's like folding up a big ordnance survey map. DMC do a printed shade card where it's just printed colours. Whilst it's good to have, better than nothing, it's always better to have a shade card that has the actual threads on. See, this is the actual thread in the booklet. I have these two, plus I have a thread card that I have cut the strips up, and I've done that because I can lay these strips on the antique sampler and match like for like, and then I can go and pull the skein. And what you'll find when you are matching colours is a colour might look one thing on a shade card, when you get the spool out or the skein, it could look slightly different, and then when you pull a thread and you stitch with it, the colour can change because of the background fabric, and also colour can change depending on the colours that surround it. So the one thing that's very important to do is that when you're getting together a palette of colours, that when you've pulled the colours individually, that you put them together and you look at them together, because one colour can affect how you see another colour. It's all done by eye. We all see colour differently, and you know, in different lights you see colour differently. I know with myself and Sandra, because Sandra lives in Australia, I live in Cornwall, the light is different and it affects how you see colour. When we were refurbishing this house, we didn't live here, we lived back in South Wales, and I used to in the week go and pick fabrics and paint samples, and then when I used to come down to Cornwall with them on the weekend, the colours always looked different here because of the different light. Colour is in your eye. Anyway, I hope that sort of gives you an insight into pulling colours. And do you know what? We are strictly governed with reproducing, that you have to match to the sampler that you're reproducing. But when you're stitching your sampler, you can use whatever colours that you would like. A lady this week shared with me her Mary Lee, and she loved the Mary Lee sampler, but there were some very prominent colours in that sampler that didn't appeal to her, and she replaced them, and her Mary Lee looks very different, but it's equally as beautiful. So, you know, please don't be afraid to tweak your colours to suit your eye. Okay, I think that is going to be about it for this week. Don't forget that we have our shaker box giveaway, and you have to look at Flosstube. I can't remember the number, but I'm going to put it in this Flosstube to find out how to enter the giveaway for this shaker sewing box. It's really beautiful. It's made by Andrew Spilsbury, and on the 19th of February, sorry, the 20th of February, somebody is going to win this shaker box, and it could be you. I've got to go and walk those doggies. And it's still raining outside. It's not quite so windy and the rain's not lashing down, but it's still a grey, miserable day. Wish me luck. I won't be coming back with tidy hair. I'll come back looking like a banshee. Anyway, have a good week, and if God is kind, I'll be back next Sunday with another Flosstube. Stay well, stay safe. Bye-bye.